Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen. Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth. I will only
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 19, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It's early Tuesday morning, July 13th, and I'm in the shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. Life is hard, my tools. Life is hard, and we all have our different ways to cope. We all have different mindless activities that we like to use in order to relax, that we engage in. One of my guilty pleasures, your boy and the missus, we watch trash TV. And I mean trash TV. I mean TV shows that really don't stimulate the mind in any form or fashion. Train wreck television. Television that you watch and you feel better about your life and your marriage and your bank account immediately. And it's one show that we've been watching here for a little while. And after watching the beginning of the new season, I was like, I don't care what else happens this week. This is going to lead off my show because it's crazy. And am I a little bit embarrassed that I'm about to share with you that I watched this show? Yeah. But it's so crazy and it's so good that I will put aside every ounce of embarrassment and I will make a fool of myself so that you can share with me and revel with me in the absolute absurdity of what I'm about to share with you. So the show in reference here, the one that I'm talking about, is a show that my wife and I watch sometimes at night when the children are in bed after a long, hard day when we just want to zone out. And it's a show called Love After Lockup. It's a show called Love After Lockup. It comes on We. I think that used to be Women's Entertainment, but hey, it's all right. I am secure in my manhood. It's 2021, and babies, let's go. And Love After Lockup is a show that is exactly what it sounds like. It is people who have been locked up and have found love, and now their lockup is over. They have been set free, and the cameras are going to follow them as they do life with their new love. Intriguing, I know. So this show follows couples that became couples when one of them was incarcerated for grand theft auto or assault with a deadly weapon or robbery or some crazy thing. And for some reason, these people have gotten on the internet and apparently on the interwebs on the line. There is websites where you can go find a prisoner to date. Had no idea that was a thing, but apparently that is a thing. That some people are tired of plenty of fish or farmersonly.com. They want to do the online dating, but they got to find them somebody that's locked down. I don't know what to say about that. If you are in such a place that you're like, I need somebody that is locked up, you might need to see a counselor. I can make you a recommendation because that's crazy. Also crazy is that thunder. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I might be in some trouble this morning. That sounds almost like a tornado. I'm out here in my shed. I'm going to pretend everything is all right. So as you can imagine on this show, almost every one of these relationships is doomed to fail. And almost every single one of these situations are just absolute bonkers. But on this season, the new season, the first episode, they take it to a whole nother level. Because one of these ladies in question did not meet her man on a prisoner dating website. She met her man because she was a prison guard. Yeah. This lady was a prison guard. And not just any prison guard. This lady was a lieutenant. And she met a prisoner. And she actually said that it was when she was going through his phone and read a poem that he wrote on one of the notes in his phone that she knew that they belonged together. You crazy. You full-blown crazy. So she knew that she was supposed to be with this man, but that's not allowed because she is a prison guard and he is a prisoner, and that is against the law. So does she decide to wait until this man gets set free? Oh, no, she does not. Does she decide to quit her job and find a different job? Oh, no, she does not. What does she decide to do? She decides to buy a total of 7 wigs and visit this man at the prison in which she works. Every time she comes in to visit him, she puts on a different wig. And the prison guard comes to her place of employment around all of her coworkers and visits the prisoner that she is now dating. Needless to say, that plan did not work for very long at all. She was caught. And she got in trouble because that is against the law. That is a big no-no. So she got arrested and she spent time in jail. And then she got released and she was on probation. So her boyfriend is finally up for release himself. But in a cruel twist of fate, he cannot be paroled to her house. Oh, by the way, somewhere in there, I think they got married, which, okay. Even though they're married, he cannot parole to her house with his wife because she's on probation for dating him while she was a prison guard and he was a prisoner at the prison where she worked as a lieutenant. He can't even parole to his own wife's house, the house where he's gonna live. He gotta go stay with a cousin because she started dating him as a prison guard in the prison that she worked when he was a prisoner after going through his phone and finding a note where he wrote some poetry. Y'all need some counseling. Maybe everything will work out. I don't know, but y'all need some counseling. I can assure you of that. To make matters worse, she has to have a friend. When he gets released, she has to have a friend. This is her husband now, but she has to have a friend drive her to the prison to pick him up. Because since she is on probation, and she got fired from that prison for dating a prisoner, she is not allowed on prison grounds. She can't even pick up her husband when he's released from prison. She had to have a friend. So a friend drops her off in the parking lot at another place and goes to pick up her husband. And she decides that as she waits for her new husband to be released from prison, she out over here in this other parking lot, that she gonna wait in a pickle costume. She dressed up like a dill pickle because there is apparently some meme that they thought was funny that involved a pickle. So this lady who used to be a prison guard, who was a lieutenant, who started dating a prisoner at the prison where she worked by visiting him, wearing different wigs at the prison where she worked around people she worked with, and then got caught and arrested and got out and put on probation, is now in a parking lot, ducked behind a parking barrier, wearing a pickle costume, sobbing and waiting for her husband to arrive so that she can see him and spend some time with him before he go to his cousin's house because he cannot parole to his wife's house because she dated him as a prison guard. This stuff cannot be made up. This is crazy. So it's obvious, it's no secret why that show makes me feel better about my own life because, Your boy got some problems and some conundrums and some things to figure out, but hey, compared to that, my life is solidly put together. I like the life that I have. I have a home and a wife, and we did not meet in prison, and we are able to live together because neither one of us is on probation, and your boy ain't got to be put on no dill pickle costume. I'm not in the parking lot sobbing. I'm hanging out with my children. It's a good life, and that show makes me feel so much better about my life. But I like that show. I gotta confess to you, Love After Lockup is a lot of fun. I recommend it highly. It's a train wreck, and it's hard to look away. I don't just watch trash TV, though. I try to always make sure that I am a learner. Love to read. Just finished a book by Tom O'Neill called Chaos. You probably heard of it. It's a book about Charles Manson and the connections between him and his family and the CIA. That's an incredible book. Highly recommend that one. I'm now reading a book called Green Lights, which is a memoir of sorts by Matthew McConaughey, of all people. All right. And people give McConaughey a hard time, like to make fun of him. Easy target. But hey, it's actually a really interesting book. A lot of insight. He uses humor and stories from his life to kind of, talk about having a plan and living by a certain value system and how we derive that value system. And it's actually a pretty good book so far. I'm about halfway through it, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Also, I always be listening to other podcasts. I'm a learner. I always have a podcast on. Always reading something. Always learning just random trivia, random knowledge. I learned in a podcast this week that apparently George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Santa Claus were all gingers. I didn't really know that. Maybe you did. You're ahead of me. I did not know that those men were gingers. I thought Mr. George Washington was just had that wig with the white hair, but I didn't know that he was wearing that wig to hide the fact that that man was a ginger. I ain't really know that. Also, apparently, people been eating cicadas now that they back. People dipping them in chocolate and eating them. I don't really eat bugs. Heard about that. And it's 2013 in Ethiopia. Everywhere else is 2021, but hey, not in Ethiopia. They are 8 years behind us. It is a fact. Those are some random facts, but that is a fact. Look it up. And that's what I've been doing this week. That's what I had going on, learning some knowledge and watching some trash TV. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get to some comments and corrections from our last episode. Keystone 158, Hanobia 137, Townsend 52. We are still patiently waiting. We're up to 530 followers on Twitter. You can add your name to that list by following the show. You can find us on Twitter at InTheShed4. We had listeners from the US, India, France, Australia, the UK, and Canada just yesterday, with our show being downloaded 25 times in one day, which for us is a lot. So to all of our friends all over the world, we say thank you. On last week's show, we got an email from Ted from Maryland claiming the ability to read minds. I issued a challenge for Ted to read my mind and even gave him the hint that I was thinking of a certain type of breakfast sandwich. Unfortunately, we have not heard back from Ted, but 18 of you did email the show wagering a guess, and none of you were correct. The breakfast sandwich that I was thinking of was a sausage McGriddle. Nobody guessed a sausage McGriddle. I guess we have no mind readers amongst our listening group. While recording last week's show, a cockroach invaded the shed and flew right above your boy's head. I'm happy to repeat that the intruder has been located and is no longer with us. R.I.P. Pouring out for our big homie. And on episode 18, we talked about the Mandela effect, which was very unsettling for me. I was certain that I had seen a 90s movie called Shazam, which apparently does not exist. After publishing the episode, I was still fairly confident, so I put a poll up on Twitter. 60% of you that responded to that poll said that no, you never saw such a film, and I am now more disillusioned than ever before. All right, that's all the comments and corrections for this week. Let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from Kyle from Minnesota, who says, Wes, why do you insist on starting and ending the show with the same intro and outro every week? It gets old. The show would be so much better if you just jump right into the news. Well, Kyle, I appreciate you listening to the show. I don't know. This is just the way I started doing the show. I have no experience doing this. We only on episode 19, and we're having fun, trying to get better as we go along, building this thing together. I guess I'm more comfortable with the intro and the outro. I like to have a little bit of familiarity. I think that it kind of lets us know at the outset and at the end of the show that we all in this thing together. I like to do comments and corrections. I've got good feedback on that. I like to read the headlines so you know that what's going around in the news, maybe some of the stories that we're not able to get to. And I like to have listener emails. I like to share your feedback, even if it is not always so positive, Kyle. But hey, thank you for listening to the show. I think for now we'll stick with what we're doing. Maybe we'll make some changes in the future. We're only 19 episodes in, bruh. Shannon from Colorado writes, Wes, I thoroughly enjoyed the marriage advice you shared to start off last week's show. Always look forward to seeing what random topic you choose to lead off the show, and I found the part about bearing with one another very helpful. I appreciate that, Shannon. I wanted to do that since my wife and I had just celebrated our anniversary. I'm glad that you found some of the advice helpful. I am by no means an expert on anything, let alone marriage, but that's some stuff that I've learned in this first 8 years. You never know what I'll start the show off with. It might be something super serious like marriage advice last week, and this week love after lockup. So I guess both times it involved love, but that's about it. And so you just never know. So glad you are enjoying the show, Shannon. And Emily from Indiana writes, I enjoyed the story about the Mandela effect. I too have no recollection of them being called the Berenstain Bears or of Oscar Mayer being spelled that way. You were creeping me out. Hey, Emily, I was creeping myself out. The Berenstain Bears one still gets me. I don't understand that at all. And the Mandela effect, a lot of these things I kind of write off. That one I am all in, and I enjoyed reporting on that. I did not enjoy experiencing the Mandela effect live on the air with you guys, but I'm glad to know I am not alone. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. We're going to read these headlines, and the rain is really coming down now. So we'll hang out together in the shed during this torrential downpour, and maybe when our show is over today and I'm done recording, I will have safe passage back into the house. I would say y'all pray for your boy, but when you hear this, this will have already happened, so you'll have no idea until next week whether or not I make it. But, hey, offer up them prayers anyway. God can time travel. Okay. Kamala backs vote fugitives, writes the Daily Mail. From the post-millennial, California rejects science, demands masking in school systems despite CDC guidelines. U.S., Russia compete among Afghanistan's Central Asia neighbors, according to Newsweek. Joe Biden's voting rights agenda shifts focus to education, says Time. And finally, Fauci gives truths and half-truths about gain-of-function research, and that is according to The Nation. Our first story in the world of politics, more than 70,000 people have signed petitions to stop Jeff Bezos from returning to Earth after his trip to space. More than 70,000 people have signed petitions calling to stop Jeff Bezos from returning to Earth after he blasts into space next week. Bezos, the founder of the space exploration firm Blue Origin, said earlier this month that he and his brother Mark Bezos would fly into space aboard the company's New Shepard rocket on July 20th in its first flight carrying people. 3 days after Bezos' announcement, 2 petitions were launched to try and prevent the billionaire's return to Earth. Each had garnered thousands of followers in just 10 days. Man, people really don't be liking Jeff Bezos. That is not one popular man. Rich, yes. Popular, no. More than 50,000 people have signed a Change.org petition titled "Do Not Allow Jeff Bezos to Return to Earth." Billionaires should not exist on Earth or in space, but should they decide the latter, they should stay there, the petition's description said. Some signatories gave a reason for signing the petition, which included comments such as, being let back into Earth is a privilege, not a right, and Earth don't want people like Jeff, Bill, Elon, and other such billionaires, presumably referring to Bill Gates and Elon Musk. Another petition called Petition to Not Allow Jeff Bezos Re-Entry to Earth has accumulated more than 20,000 signatures. Jose Ortiz, who set up the petition, said in the description that Bezos was an evil overlord hell-bent on global domination. The fate of humanity is in your hands, Ortiz also wrote. That's so dramatic, though. The fate of you. Sign this petition online because the fate of humanity is in your hands. If we get enough signatures, NASA may block that man from... I know this is tongue-in-cheek, but it's still pretty funny. Both petitions had been seeking 25,000 to 50,000 signatures, which would make them two of the top signed petitions on change.org, according to the website. Bezos plans to take an 11-minute flight to the edge of space in New Shepard alongside his brother and an unnamed auction winner who paid $28 million for a seat. $28 million. Somebody paid $28 million for a seat on this rocket. We don't even know who it is. It's an anonymous person I can't wait to see. It's going to be somebody that blows our minds. People are hating on Jeff Bezos. They don't want him to return. And then we're going to find out that the person that bought this seat is Michelle Obama. And then everybody's going to change their mind. And they're going to feel regret that they done signed this petition to keep that man in outer space rotating around the world because Michelle Obama up there. And most everybody except for some far-right people think that Michelle Obama is wonderful. Who could it be? Oprah Winfrey? She got the money. What if it was Donald Trump, though? Like, what if Jeff Bezos and Donald Trump were going up there in this rocket? A lot of possibilities. I'm just saying. Once New Shepard reaches the Kármán line, an imaginary boundary 100 kilometers or 62 miles above the Earth's surface, the capsule is designed to separate from the booster, re-enter the atmosphere, and float back down to Earth with the help of parachutes. I want to go on this flight because it's a thing that I've wanted to do all my life, Bezos said in a video posted to Instagram on June 7th. It's an adventure. It's a big deal for me. So Jeff Bezos is so unliked that two petitions have garnered 70,000 signatures in a 10-day span to keep that man up in orbit. That's why they say you can't buy happiness, because Jeff Bezos has everything. He can buy everything, and still the man can't buy no friends. I'll hang out with you, Jeff. Put me on your rocket. Give me a couple meals spending money, call it a day. I am seriously intrigued to see who paid $28 million to get on this rocket, though, to sit in that third seat. That's a lot of money. And also, I know these things sort of fly themselves, but if I'm Jeff Bezos, ain't no way in the world, I guess no way in space, I'm going to get up on this rocket with just me and my brother and some other rich person with nobody that knows what to do if things go sideways. Pretty much, he's just saying this is going to work, and I'm so certain of it that we just going up there. Because if something happened, they ain't got nobody with them to fix it. They ain't got nobody to problem solve, nobody to figure things out. They just gonna be stuck up a creek without a paddle. And you would think that man could afford a paddle. But I wonder who thinks that we care so much about what billionaires do for fun and how they spend their money. Like, who thinks that we care more about Jeff Bezos and what he's up to? The media or Jeff Bezos? Because they both be telling us all the time everything that man up to. And we did a story a couple weeks ago about how Jeff Bezos' group was the runner-up to Virgin, the group by Richard Branson, and they've already done their flight, and how Congress wanted to give Jeff Bezos $10 billion because his company wasn't awarded all the money in the first place, and he got this participation trophy of like $10 billion of taxpayer money. And it's all crazy. Like, it's all crazy. It's all kind of a monument to exuberant materialism and capitalism gone amok. I'm not one to check your pockets. You got the money, you want to spend it to go to space, knock yourself out. But to give taxpayer money to support you, like, I'm not into that. It's people living on the streets. I'm not into that. It's people that can't afford health care. I'm not into that. Like, I don't want to hear every time a billionaire sneezes, they're going to report it on the news like the rest of us care. In theory, I'm not against the space race being privatized because competition and not having to cut through the red tape of government can help make things better and make things happen faster and be more efficient. But all I'm seeing so far is these rich people just getting on a rocket and flying up to the edge of the space, which really just means they're going a little higher than the airplane anyway. I'd rather watch an NBA game. I'd rather watch Love After Lockup. Let me see what happened to that Dill Pickle. But 70,000 people. To have 70,000 people sign a petition saying they don't want you on the planet, that's got to hurt your feelings, even if you got $1 billion. Almost $1 trillion. That still it would hurt my feelings. It would still hurt my feelings. So, we'll see what happened with this rocket. You know, hope nothing goes sideways because he ain't got no plan B. Very confident in his abilities. And at this rate, I'm just hoping Amazon doesn't buy the moon. Because I'm afraid if they own the moon, you know, we might be in trouble. And I think that's their next step, is to buy the moon. So, Jeff Bezos. It is really coming down. I don't know how this is going to sound when I go to mix it and put it out there, publish it to you guys. We don't do a lot of editing. We try to keep it live. So if you're hearing all this noise in the background, that is the torrential downpour that is now happening outside the shed. Strong winds. I think I'm okay so far. But this may be my last transmission. So it's been real. And I appreciate you. Our next story in the world of politics, the Massachusetts government is suing a family for $42 million over a salamander that isn't even endangered. Back in 2017, the Masucos bought a property in South Dartmouth, Massachusetts, for them to raise their children and care for their horses and multitude of pets. Before they bought it, they made sure they had permission to clear some trees to make room for their horses. They were told everything was fine, so I hope everything is fine for me. That boom was close. I might need to leave and evacuate this shed. That was scary for real. Like, that was it shook the ground. Let's get back to the story. I think I'm okay. They were told everything was fine, so they bought it and proceeded to clear. Soon after, the Massachusetts government informed them that their entire property was a priority habitat for the marbled salamander, a non-endangered species. The reason no one knew this is because the government doesn't bother registering their priority habitats with the state registry. The Masucos have never seen a salamander on their property, but that's okay because the state is not required to prove that the species even lives on the property they claim as habitats. Attorney General Maura Healey gave the Masucos a chance to settle the matter by giving the property to the state and paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. They refused, so now she's suing them for $42 million plus $30,000 each day for each day the suit continues. Again, the state did not bother telling anyone the property was protected. They never have to show that a single salamander lives there. The salamander isn't even threatened, but that isn't stopping them from trying to ruin a family's life. There's no way of knowing how many other families they've done this to because these agencies are covered by laws that protect them from the public, who is not allowed to access their records. This is what happens when government is put in charge of protecting the environment. They use that power to ruin people's lives and steal their property, while the big business who put them in office continue to pollute with impunity. So that story is obviously from the perspective of the family. I tried to research and look at the other side because, you know, on In the Shed, we try to give it to you straight. We keep it a buck with you. The state says that they tried to work with this family for quite a while and that they just dropped communication, and that the salamander is not endangered, but it is a threatened species, which is one step from being endangered. But hey, honestly, I have a hard time with this story because I'm all about protecting the environment. I'm all about protecting wildlife. I think what we've done to our planet and what we're doing to our planet, what we've done to the habitats and the beautiful scenery that we have in this country is despicable in a lot of ways. I think for too long we've let too much go. But to me, this just seems like a land grab from the government, right? Like, this family tried to do everything the right way. When they bought the house, they asked the selling agent, they asked the closing agent, they asked the local authorities and government, and no one said boo about it. No one said anything about a salamander. Nobody said anything about protected area. Nobody saw any problems with trees being removed to take care of their horses. And then after they started clearing land, they got these notices that what they were doing was violating all of these protection acts and was against the law, and they were going to be fined thousands and thousands of dollars. They should just forfeit those acreages over. Like, they bought this land with their own hard-earned money. Like, this is their land to do what they please. And to tell them they either have to give up that land or pay an exorbitant fees and fines that they probably don't have the money to do really seems like a mob mentality. Something that a criminal organization would do. How they would use their leverage to get what they want, but it's coming from the government. The government that these folks pay taxes into and toward. And look, I'm not an anti-government person, all right? Like, I don't necessarily think that taxes are theft. I think that if used right, they can be helpful. And I do want to protect our wildlife. But you got to draw a line somewhere, too. And if a family tries to go about things the right way, and everybody tells them, yeah, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, you don't get to come back retroactively and try to fine me $30,000 a day or demand that I give you my property that I have just purchased. Like, that seems crazy. And if that's happening to other families, it's almost a tragedy. Because it's preventing these families from being able to take care of their land and their animals and give their children the type of life that they were trying to have when they bought that place to begin with. And I get it. Like, government is there to protect us, to protect our land, to make sure that people are following laws. But this is too much and then some. That's just my opinion. This is too much and then some. All this for the marbled salamander. I somehow I'd have a hard time believing that removing trees from 3 acres of land that you own is going to put the marbled salamander on the endangered species list. I have a hard time seeing it, but that's just me. That's just me. So I think like this is one of those situations where the government is overreaching. They need to back up off this family's property. As I said, that's just my opinion. What do you think, my tools? What is your opinion? Get at us. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. That's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Is the Masuko family in the right here? Or should they forfeit their land? Should they try to find a way to pay those fines and be done with it? It seems like a lot. It seems like a prison sentence when you should be getting a speeding ticket. Like, the two things don't seem to add up to me. And I'd love to hear what you think about it. Government is supposed to be for the people and by the people and of the people, not against the people. Our next story, majority believes Biden officials and not the president are secretly running the country, one poll says. Most people in the United States believe that the Biden administration officials and not President Joe Biden are directing the country's agenda and policy, according to a national poll. 57% of respondents to a Convention of States Action and Trafalgar Group poll said that the president is not fully executing the duties of his office. 36% said they were confident that he was directing all policy and agenda matters. There was a disparity between political ideologies, as nearly 59% of Democratic voters said that they thought Biden was in charge of the administration, while only 32% said he was not in charge. On the Republican side, 84% of voters said that they did not believe that Biden was fully executing the duties of his office, with only 11% of GOP voters believing that he is directing all policy and agenda matters. 58% of independent voters said they did not believe Biden was fully executing the duties of his office, while 36% disagreed. The results of the poll prove that people deserve to know about Biden's physical and mental health, said Mark Meckler, president of the Convention of States Action. President Lincoln's famous refrain that you can't fool all of the people all of the time has never been more relevant and critical to the survival of our American republic, Meckler said. The American people deserve transparency from the Biden administration as to the true state of the president's mental and physical health, and leaders in both parties in Congress need to follow through on this immediately. The continued failure to ask hard questions and demand real answers is a disgrace to the foundation of our democracy, he said. The poll was conducted between June 23rd and 25th among 1,086 respondents and had a margin of error of plus or minus 2.9 percentage points. So, let me tell you what I'm not about to do. I'm not about to come out here in my shed with the rain falling and tell you that Joe Biden has dementia, that he's out of his mind, that he doesn't know where he is. Hey, I'm not a doctor. That is something that I do not know. I'm not around the man. I do not know the man. I only see him on television. But what I can tell you is that this poll is legitimately a problem. Because between Republican, Democrat, and Independent people polled, almost 1,100 people, an average of 57% of them believe that it is not the president who is running the show, but it's actually his cabinet, his advisors, and his staff. And that's a problem. If you want a government that works efficiently for the people, that's a problem. If you're a Democrat who's hoping that he or someone else in your party is elected in 2024, that's a problem. Folks on the far right, they tell you that Joe Biden has dementia, that he doesn't know what he's saying half the time. That's the reason why he's not doing as many press conferences, all this kind of stuff. People on the left will tell you that there's absolutely no issue, that he's as sharp as ever. And in my estimation, they're both just playing partisan politics. Because the truth is, it's clear to see that Joe Biden has lost a step since he was vice president. And the truth is, we don't know why that is the case. But we do know that the man is old. The man is old. Do you have grandparents? Do you have parents? Have you seen people age? When people age, it takes them longer to formulate their thoughts. It takes them longer to put their words together. Sometimes they forget things. Sometimes they misstep. It happens more often when you're older, and Joe Biden is a very old president. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's not up to the task, that he's not calling the shots, that he's not capable, that he's not able. It just means that he's old. And I think a lot of times for folks on the right to just swear up and down that the man has dementia, that he doesn't have all of his marbles, that he's lost it, is fueled by hate. And that's not cool. Like, that's not a good thing. Like, just say you don't like the man. Just say you disagree with his politics. You ain't got to go to that level. You're not a doctor either. And if you are a doctor, you probably have not been the one examining his mental faculties. A lot of times it's just fueled by hate. And the irony of it is that Donald Trump was an old president too. Now, granted, he's more bombastic and he appears to have much more energy than someone like a Joe Biden. But Donald Trump messed up his words sometimes too. The man said things that were incoherent sometimes too. The man very publicly talked about having a cognitive test, which he said that he aced. But it's kind of ironic for people on the far right to talk about Joe Biden in that regard, when they completely ignore some similarities from the previous president. The other side of the coin is that people on the far left aren't doing any favors to the Biden administration either, in saying that he's as sharp as ever and pretending that there is no drop off in his ability to give a speech or to stay on point, because we all have ears, we all have eyes, and we see it when he's reading off a teleprompter, when he does something impromptu, when he's trying to answer a reporter's questions. Like, we see it. And it very well may be just that he's old, and he very well may be very capable of doing an exemplary job as president. He might be up to the task, but to pretend that he hasn't slowed down a little bit in his older age, and to just say there's nothing to see here, it's a problem as well. So the left and the right are both playing partisan politics, and as a result, most Americans are unsure of what to think, or unsure of what to believe. They feel disillusioned, they feel lied to, they feel misguided. And as a result of that, 1,100 people were polled, and 57% think that the President of the United States is not up to the job. And that's a problem. If we're honest, if we let some of this partisanship go, if we use common sense, we can avoid such issues. But if we play my team versus your team, red versus blue, donkeys and elephants, on every subject and every turn, these are the types of conversations we wind up having, where a majority of people don't have confidence in the president, his administration, the government. They don't know who are running things. And in a democracy, and in a republic like ours, that's not a good place to find ourselves. And both sides need to do better. And that's the truth. Our last story in the world of politics, Marcel's trainer calls David Schwimmer jealous and despicable for complaining about the monkey on Friends: The Reunion. The trainer of Marcel the monkey, who starred in Friends, called Ross Geller actor David Schwimmer jealous and despicable in an interview with The Sun. Marcel appeared in 8 episodes in the first season of the hit series as the pet of Schwimmer's Ross before being written off the show. The primate was played by 2 female capuchin monkeys, Katie and Monkey. Yeah, they named the monkey Monkey. Hey, Monkey. In the recent Friends The Reunion special on HBO, Schwimmer said Marcel missed the mark many times, which made the animal hard to work with. He ain't even calling that monkey by its real name. He just calling it by the name on the show. That's disrespectful, David Schwimmer. That's disrespectful. Well, if we just call you Ross all the time, that probably happens to him, though. People probably do just call him Ross all the time. Okay, moving on. He said what inevitably began to happen was we would all have choreographed bits kind of timed out, and it would get messed up because the monkey didn't do its job right. So we would have to reset. We'd have to go again because the monkey didn't get it right. He also said he did not like that the animal ate food on his shoulder. Come on, Ross. It's a monkey. Ross out here complaining because the monkey ate food. What do you think the monkey's supposed to do, Ross? It's a monkey. Like, a monkey could sit on my shoulder and eat whatever he wants to. I think that'd be pretty dope. That's just me. Out here complaining because the monkey ate something. The monkey had the audacity to eat while it was on my shoulder. You sound like a Karen. That's what you sound like. Probably called the manager. Come get this monkey. He's eating. So the monkey would be sitting on my shoulder, take some grubs, break them in half, the squirming live grub. They ate it, and then they would just go like that and put their hands on me, the 54-year-old actor said. Okay, I'm back on your side, Ross. I'm once again Team David Schwimmer. I did not know that what the monkey was eating was some worms, because I would not want a monkey eating worms on my shoulder either. I thought we were talking about a banana or a nice piece of mango, not worms. He added, it was time for Marcel, to F off. Strong language, Ross. Marcel's trainer, Mike Morris, told The Sun in an interview published Monday that it was despicable for him to still be speaking ill of her when one of the Capuchins, Monkey, had passed away last year. I'm back on the Monkeys team. I'll keep going back and forth, but I'm back on Team Monkey now. You don't talk ill of the dead Ross Geller. That is not something that we do. We do not speak ill of the dead, even if they are a monkey. And I'm back on Team Monkey. Schwimmer was fine with the monkeys for the first couple of episodes and happy to be there, Moore said. But people would laugh at the monkey, and I think that he got jealous because it wasn't him getting the laughs. He seemed to get a little bitter about them being there after that. And of course, the monkeys didn't like working with him after he turned on them. Those are some sensitive monkeys. When he complained about the monkeys didn't like working with him. Like they knew. They knew what Ross was saying. They knew that Ross was displeased and voicing that to the manager, and they no longer enjoyed working with him. Is that the truth, or is this trainer putting words into the monkey's mouth? Because that's where the grub goes. He added, my colleague who has also worked on the show says that people would laugh at the monkey and throw Schwimmer off. He's not the kind of actor who can improvise. Oh, shots fired. Shots fired by the monkey trainer. He's saying David Schwimmer is not the type of actor that can improvise. That whenever the people would laugh at the monkey, it would throw him off because it was not in the script for people to be laughing right then. They were supposed to wait till he hit his mark. He would get thrown off. He's no Will Ferrell. That's what this guy's saying. He's no Vince Vaughn. He's no Owen Wilson. This man cannot improvise. Shots fired. This is not the first time that Schwimmer has spoken out against Marcel. In 1995, the Friends actor told Entertainment Weekly, I hate the monkey. I wish it were dead. Oh my goodness, Ross. Ross Geller. David Schwimmer, OJ's lawyer. This man out here saying he wished the monkey was dead. And now the monkey is dead. Oh yeah, that cements it. I am firmly entrenched on Team Monkey. I am forever Team Monkey. Ross Geller can kiss my big toe. I don't want nothing to do with you, homie. Seinfeld is better anyway. And we all know it. The monkey trainer told The Sun that he did not speak out before because he felt it was unprofessional to do so. But it's kind of bad that he's still talking about the monkey this many years after the show ended. It was one season over 25 years ago. It's time to let it go, he added. It's almost like he's still got a monkey on his back. Katie can't speak for herself, so that's why I'm talking out for her. The other cast members did not have problems with the monkey, but Courtney Cox, who played Monica, said in the reunion that the animal had scared her. Meanwhile, Jennifer Aniston said she loved the monkey, and Matt LeBlanc said on an episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live that he got along great with it. And that's why Jennifer Aniston and Joey are the two best people from Friends, along with Lisa Kudrow and Matthew Perry. Ross, you and your sister can get on somewhere talking bad about this monkey. I'm Team Katie. I'm Team Monkey. And this is why you love In the Shed with Wes, my babies. Because who else is bringing you the truth about Marcel the monkey on syndicated sitcom Friends after all these years? We setting the record straight here on In the Shed. I'm in the shed in the backyard of my home in a rainstorm talking about a monkey that was on a 90s sitcom. This is my life. I'm Team Monkey. From the world of politics, let's switch to the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Clippers say Kawhi Leonard had surgery for partially torn ACL. Team USA rights the ship with blowout win over Argentina. Chiefs Clark faces felony weapons charge. The XFL plans a 2023 relaunch. The New Orleans Pelicans are working toward a deal to announce Suns assistant coach Willie Green as their head man. Kentucky football lands LSU transfer lineman. Terrell Pryor wants Ohio State records restored. And judge convicts Ron Bell of 6 misdemeanor counts over orchestrating false sexual assault allegations against Georgia Tech men's basketball coach Josh Pastner. Our first story in the world of sports: EA Sports releases statement on NCAA football video games return as NIL era gets underway. College football's new era of players profiting through name, image, and likeness parameters is upon us, and developers at EA Sports are bringing the popular NCAA football video game back sooner than initially expected. Following loosened restrictions and the legalization of names, image, and likenesses across college athletics on Thursday, EA Sports released a statement and updated its users on the situation. We're watching the recent developments regarding student-athlete name, image, and likeness very closely, EA Sports wrote in a statement. It's still very early stages at this point, and we plan to explore the possibility of including players in EA Sports college football. For now, our development team is focused on working with our partners at CLC to ensure the game authentically showcases the great sport of college football and the more than 100 institutions signed on to be featured in our game. According to a leaked document obtained by Matt Brown of Extra Points, EA Sports has a plan in place to release the newest installment of the game in July 2023, with a 4-year license proposal in place. Christmas Day arrived earlier than expected for college football fans in February when EA Sports announced the return of its ever-popular college football video game, a shocking development at the time since the franchise has been extinct since the 2014 installment. Lawsuits over athlete likeness, including the landmark proceedings of Ed O'Bannon, ended the game's circulation with 2014 version, leading to widespread disappointment from gamers and sports fans across the country. The courts ruled EA Sports had used athlete likeness without permission or compensation, and the video game company eventually paid out $60 million in settlements to athletes who appeared in its games between 2003 and 2014. EA Sports posted a message on Twitter that said college football is coming back, and the post quickly went viral, and now it's full steam ahead. So I think this is really good news. I'm not sure that I have heard better news than this today, that the college football game that I grew up on and loved playing is on its way back. And how dope would it be too if you actually have real-life players, not just the numbers, but the actual players from the university that you pull for in the game also, and if the players are actually able finally to profit a little bit from the game as well. It's a win-win-win-win, a 360 win, my babies. I loved NCAA football games. Like, to me, not just sports games, but of all video games. Like, that's one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, up there with Galaga, Mario, Pac-Man, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Tecmo Bowl, GoldenEye, Super Smash Brothers, The Last of Us, and NBA Jam. Like, just off the top of my head, I'm just spitballing, but those are my 10 favorite games of all time, my 10 favorite video games of all time. And NCAA football has got to be on that list. It's right there. I used to love that game. I played it all the time. In fact, I'm one of those folks that after the game got discontinued, I went on to eBay and I found some old copies and bought the game so that I would have it for posterity's sake. So I think it's pretty cool if this game comes back. We've been waiting for this for years. People can rejoice. What year was your favorite of this game, my tools? Who was on the cover of the year that you thought this game was the best? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com and let us know. I like the years where you could actually make your own squad, where you could make up your own university, pick a uniform combination and a mascot, and I had some pretty dope teams. I never used the cheat codes. I never imported rosters. But hey, your boy could recruit on that game. And I immediately put it to the hardest level and picked the worst teams. And I still go undefeated or have one loss. And I will beat anybody. You don't want it on them sticks. NCAA football, I will win. And I will win big. I'm in the shed talking about monkeys and bragging about winning video games. Hoping to survive a storm on a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, club going up. On a Tuesday. Welcome to my life. For our next story in the world of sports, let's talk NBA Finals. Currently, the Suns have a 2-1 lead over the Milwaukee Bucks. With the next game happening on Wednesday night, the Bucks finally got a win in the series, winning their first game in Milwaukee in dominant fashion. It wasn't really close for most of the game, and Giannis had another 40-point finals game. And I've told you all year long that Giannis cannot shoot. And that the way the teams have been able to defend him in the past is just to pack the paint, to keep him out the paint, to make him a shooter. And then the Bucks have not had enough around Giannis to overcome that and to compensate for that. And earlier in the playoffs, I wondered aloud to you if this year was different because Chris Middleton is playing a tad more consistent, because the Bucks have added PJ Tucker, Jrue Holiday, and Bobby Portis, and it just may be. It just may be. Devin Booker did not play a good game in Game 3. He has not looked the same since he's broken his nose. Before that, he was one of the better players in the playoffs. Since that, he's been up and down. The Suns need him to play better if they're going to win this series. Reminder, I picked the Suns in 6 games, and I thought that after 4 games, everything would be even. So far, we are still on course there. But what I noticed the most is the greatness of Giannis. And that may sound a tad like revisionist history when I've been telling you all season long that the man cannot shoot the basketball. But it's really not. Because the greatness of a player is put on display the most when they stop trying to do the things that they cannot do and instead focus on the things that they excel at. And Giannis excels in the post. He excels by setting hard picks and rolling to the basket. He excels in the fast break. And he excels facing up against a big from 14 feet away and driving past them. And at least in Game 3, that's what Giannis focused on. And if Giannis will simply focus on that, if the Bucks will make the choice to put that man in the post, to have him set hard picks and roll to the basket, to use him on fast breaks, to have him never go outside of 14 or 15 feet, but when he is at 15 feet, rather than settling for the jump shot, to face up a bigger defender and drive through him or around him or jump over him, if they focus on that, and that alone, if they can convince Giannis that that is his game, that's what he needs to do, he can be the best player in the league. He can take his team to a championship. The problem for the Bucks has been that they haven't had enough around him. Well, they've addressed it. The problem for the Bucks has been that they can't convince Giannis to only do the things that he's good at. He seems to be getting the message. Like, I'm okay during the regular season if Giannis wants to work on his three-point shot. In the offseason, if he wants to work on his three-point shot. Like, if he could shoot, 33, 34% from 3, sure, it'd be a helpful thing. But, hey, if they can just convince Giannis to be dominant where he is dominant, to get down in the post and to get some post moves, to work on that little turnaround jump shot from 12 feet, to face up from 14 to 15 feet against the bigger defenders, to catch the oop, to get out on the break, not to try and be a point guard or a point forward, but to get down in the post. If they can convince him and sell him on that, he can be the most dominant force in the game. And people say, well, that doesn't work in today's positionless basketball. He has to have a jump shot, yada, yada, yada. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Ben Simmons has to learn to shoot the ball a little bit if he's going to be a point guard. If he's going to be a guard with the ball in his hands, he's got to at least be able to even try to make an open jump shot. But if Giannis is not a point guard, if Giannis is not a point forward, if Giannis is in the post, he don't have to have a jump shot. Shaquille O'Neal never had a jump shot. Nobody ever complained that Kareem did nothing but shoot skyhooks. If Giannis is dominant in the paint, let him be dominant in the paint. And if it's working and if teams are winning, and especially if they're able to win a championship, that's all that will matter. But hey, even if they do win, let's be real. Deer District is the lamest thing I've ever heard. I've got some blowback on Twitter because I keep posting that every round. People think I'm just a salty Atlanta Hawks fan, which I am. But even so, Deer District is the lamest thing I've ever heard. I don't care how many thousands of people are there. I don't care how much noise they make. Like, it's a lame name for that place. Deer District. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens tonight, to see if Chris Paul can lead the Suns to a 3-1 commanding lead and steal one in Milwaukee, or if the Bucks will even things up. It's hilarious to watch the commentators on ESPN, on FSN1, on Fox Sports Radio, who just jump back and forth. They say the Suns are going to win, then the Bucks have a good win. They say the Bucks have figured it out. The Bucks are going to win. If the Suns win tonight, they're back on the Suns, yada, yada, yada. We told you Suns in 6 games. We're going to stick with Suns in 6 games. I think that they're the better team overall. Even with injuries, I think that that's what's going to happen. I think Monty Williams is a better coach. I think that Chris Paul has his team playing well, and they each know their role, whereas the Bucks have different roles and have to make adjustments and figure things out from night to night. They're not sure what to do sometimes on the road. The Suns know their role, and I think that they're going to win the series. Our last story in the world of sports, UFC 264. That's right. Did you see UFC 264? Who bought the fight? Who watched it? My wife and I did. We bought the fight. People on Twitter talking about, I bet you are so sad that you paid $70 when the McGregor and Poirier fight wound up ending the way it did. Hey, there were 13 fights. That's like $5.38 or 39 cents a fight. That's a pretty good deal. Just say you're broke. Just say you ain't got it like that. People on Twitter talking about, ha ha ha, you paid money for the fight. Just say you ain't got it like that. And that $70 is a lot more to you than it is to me. Because, hey, I'm not loaded. I'm not rolling in the dough. But I'm able to pay for the fight. And I enjoyed all 13 fights. I watched them all. Had my 5-year-old daughter watching the fights with me. She's never seen UFC or MMA before. I got to tell you, 5 minutes into the fight, she was like, hey, kick him in the throat. Choke him out. Get him. Attack. Attack. It was both adorable and alarming. And I'm locking my door when I go to sleep at night. She was really into it. It was pretty fun to sit and watch a couple fights with her. Of course, I had to have the we don't do the things that we see on TV discussion, which we did because I'm a good parent. But it was cool. And of the 13 fights, there was a lot happening. In one of our lady fights, I don't know if that's what they call them, lady fights, women's UFC. In one of the fights between women, there was a lady whose last name was I. And she was given a third eye. She got headbutted, and the middle of her forehead opened up to the size of a golf ball. And I just couldn't help but think about the irony of the fact that her name was I. I think her name was like Jessica I. I felt bad for her, but I thought that it was also kind of ironic. It was awesome to see Greg Hardy get knocked out. Greg Hardy, former NFL player, who is now trying to make it in the UFC. He had a fight in the heavyweight division, and he came out at the beginning of the fight, and he looked pretty good for about the first 30 seconds, and then it was clear he had no stamina. It's not so easy for Greg Hardy when he's not beating on women, when he has to stand up and fight a man rather than his girlfriend. And the guy that knocked him out was hilarious, Tuivasa. I'm not familiar with Tuivasa. Apparently he's a pretty popular fighter in the heavyweight division, but the man came out to the Spice Girls. The man came walking out. So you have Greg Hardy, who's looking all serious and trying to be tough and putting on airs, and he walks out to some hip-hop song. And then here comes Tuivasa with a full grin wrapped in the flag of his home country. And this comes over the intercom. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really. And he's just singing along, too. The man was mouthing every word. And then he stepped into the ring, and he took Greg Hardy out by TKO. So Tuivasa was out here doing the Lord's work. Like, I ain't got no love lost for Greg Hardy. You pick on people who are physically less superior than you, who are physically inferior to you, I got no love lost for you. And I'm glad that the man got knocked out. That was a definite plus. There was also another fight between ladies, and it was a fight between a lady who hails from Russia and a lady who hails from Mexico named Aldana. And at the beginning of the fight, like, I thought that Aldana was about to get beat, because when they showed both fighters in their corners, the Russian had like that stereotypical serious, like, I will break you face going on. And then they showed Aldana, and she was giggling and smiling. And I looked over at my wife and said, oh, she about to get it. Like, she about to get hurt. She over here about to fight this fight with this Russian who looks like a robot intent on destruction. And she's giggling and laughing and smiling, and she is so very happy. And the fight started. And Aldana absolutely dominated the fight. She dominated the fight. She took her out by TKO, and when she did, she looked even happier, and she's smiling and greeting her people, and she's what's up, and folks. And I was like, hey, I like this girl. I like Aldana. She's a happy warrior. It was a lot of fun to see her fight, to see somebody that can be so tough and so strong and also so full of joy. And people always say that about athletes. I love watching them play because they play with a lot of joy and a lot of passion. And Aldana epitomizes that, and I'll be watching her when she's on the card from now on. But I got to say, my favorite fight to watch, the best fight to me out of all 13 fights, was between Matino and O'Malley. I don't remember if these guys are featherweights or what. They're real small guys, about my size, actually, oddly enough. A little fun fact for you there. But O'Malley is a savage. O'Malley has won his last 3 fights coming into this one by TKO. He knocks people out. He's got a good right cross. He's a savage, and he's a showboater. He talks trash. He knocks people out, and he wants to do so with style. And they got this kid from Boston named Matino. I've never heard of Matino before. Most people had never heard of Matino before. And Matino got a call 11 days before the fight to let him know that he was going to be on the card and get his very first ever UFC fight on the Poirier-McGregor fight card. This man had 11 days to prepare for his first ever fight in the UFC. And he did not win. Matino did not win the fight. But he won the support of the public. The man won the people. And he won millions of new fans. Because, A, O'Malley was straight giving it to Matino. He was setting records for number of hits in a round, for percentage of hits that made contact with your opponent. He was setting records. He was straight pummeling Matino in the face. And Matino never backed down. He kept taking it and coming. He's got a chin of steel, a face of steel, really. Like, this man kept taking it and coming right at him. Like, we started watching the fight, and by the end of it, my wife and I were like cheering for this Matino guy. We wanted him to win. Like, we wanted him to find a way to knock out O'Malley. And by the end of the fight, O'Malley was tired. He was working hard. He was tired. And it was kind of reminiscent of Rocky when the Russian is just beating the stew out of Rocky, but Rocky won't break. And then he goes back to the corner, and the Russian's like, he's not human. It was sort of like that. Matino was like Rocky. He was like a real-life Rocky Balboa, because he was getting the tar beat out of him. And he wasn't backing down. He wasn't breaking. And he had O'Malley tired. If they had gone another round or two, Matino might have found a way to knock the man out. And talk about heart, talk about passion, talk about a love of fighting, talk about somebody that puts it all on the line. Like, I am a new fan of Chris Matino. Like, this dude is a beast. And if I see him on a fight card, I might buy the fight just to watch that man. So he didn't win the fight, but in a way he kind of won the fight. You know what I'm saying? And then there was the main event, Poirier and McGregor 3. The first time they linked up, McGregor knocked Poirier out. 6 or 7 months ago, Poirier knocked McGregor out, and this was the rubber match. So the last time coming into the fight, Conor McGregor was not like himself. He was saying he was going to donate to Poirier's charity. He was complimenting him as a fighter. He was a much nicer Much more subdued Conor McGregor than we are used to. Conor McGregor! That's still really bad, ain't it? It was not like that going into this fight. He was ticked off, and he was talking all kinds of trash. He said he was going to walk Poirier like a dog and put him to sleep, that he was going to tear his head off, that he was going to send him out on a stretcher. And actually, Mr. Notorious himself was the one to leave on a stretcher after breaking his tibia and his fibia. And I made no bones about it. I was going for Conor McGregor. I have nothing against Poirier. Sometimes I know McGregor kind of is over the top and too bombastic, and he crosses the line and talking about your family and your spouse and all this kind of stuff. I'm not a fan of that. But I was going for Conor McGregor because the game is more fun when he's a good fighter. And we've talked before on the show, after the last fight, we even said that Conor McGregor is still a superstar, and he's still a box office hit, and that he's still a draw, but that we don't know what type of fighter he is anymore, and that he may never be back to form when it comes to what he does inside the octagon. And so I was hoping that we would see Conor kind of get back in there and prove himself again. But what appears to have happened is early on in the fight. So the fight began and Conor came out aggressive, a lot of kicks. And he was really working that lead leg of Poirier. And apparently one of those times the kick kind of hit Poirier right above the knee. Poirier kind of tried to half check it. And people think that that's when Conor McGregor experienced the break, and then maybe because adrenaline and everything else, it didn't actually show up until there was a couple seconds left in that first round. Conor McGregor stepped back to avoid a punch, and his ankle looked like an L. It looked like an L, which I guess was appropriate for the night. And at first, McGregor was on the ground, and Poirier jumped on top of him and hit him a couple times, and the horn sounded for the end of the first round. And I thought, okay, well, he got out of the first round. Like, he took his lumps, but, we'll see what happens. He's still in it. And then I saw his face, and I saw that he was pointing down, and his foot was turned in a way that it is not supposed to turn. And it became apparent that the fight was over. The man had broken his foot. And granted, we don't know what would have happened if the fight continued. Everybody's kind of saying, well, Poirier was dominating the fight, and so Poirier obviously would have won. We don't really know that. There have been plenty of fights before where the first round looked one way, then things turned. They can turn on a dime. I didn't agree with people that said that McGregor made a big mistake in trying to get Poirier in the guillotine. I thought that was Conor swinging for the fences when it looked like he had an opening, because that was pretty much his chance of winning the fight, was to get a quick knockout or to get a quick submission. Poirier is just too good of a technical fighter. He is in his prime, and Conor McGregor is on the other side of his prime. That's just the truth of it. Probably if the fight had continued, Poirier would have won the fight. He looked like the better fighter. Conor did look better than last time. He got some blows in there. He got some elbows and some kicks, a couple of punches. It wasn't a blowout in the first round. He didn't get trounced by Poirier, but he definitely did take more licks than Poirier, and Poirier was winning that fight after round one. The craziest thing about the fight, though, was after the fight was over, Joe Rogan came out. He interviewed the winning fighter like he does, but then, of course, in the main fight, he always interviews both parties. And the man went down on the ground and sat next to Conor McGregor to interview him. There's memes all over the internet. You can look them up. They're pretty funny. But I was like, hey, they're still going to interview this man even though he has a broken leg. Like, he's sitting there in so much pain, and they're like, tell us about the fight. And Conor McGregor did not hold back. He said that he would take it out to the parking lot, that this isn't over, that he didn't lose the fight. It was a doctor's stoppage. And then he said, I'll see your wife in my DMs. Oof. Sheesh. Man. He's talking about that man's wife after the man broke his leg. What would he have said if he had won? I'm never a fan of people talking about other people's wives, especially not so publicly. And the interesting thing was Ronda Rousey came out and on Twitter and supported Conor McGregor even in his comments. And when she got backlash, she doubled down on it. She was like, if you want a good sportsmanship, take it to the Olympics. This is UFC. This is about fighting. And I kind of wonder if Conor McGregor's career might now look more like Ronda Rousey's, because 2 of his last 3 fights, he got knocked out and he had to stop because he broke his leg. It's going to be difficult for him to come back and get back in the octagon to begin with after this break. But even if he does, isn't isn't he shell-shocked by now? After losing 2 big fights to the same guy in such crazy fashion, isn't he going to be kind of shell-shocked? It's hard when you're worth $400 million to wake up in the morning and want to get hit in the face. He ain't got to do that anymore. He's got money. We reported a few shows ago about how he sold a majority stake in his liquor company and made hundreds of millions of dollars. I just wonder if he has the same desire. Like, if he had won this fight, he would have gotten a shot at the belt. But does he even really care? Does he have the desire anymore? Or is he just collecting box office? So I really think this fight could have cemented his legacy as one of the top 5 or 6 fighters in UFC history. The fact that it ended the way it did is unfortunate. I don't think it means that he's not a good fighter, that he can't win fights anymore. But I do think it probably signifies that his reign as an elite fighter is over. If you match him up with an average fighter, he could probably still win a fight once he gets healthy, because when he was at the top of his game, he was far above those fighters. But he's clearly not at the top of his game anymore. And I think that if he and Poirier fight again, Poirier will knock him out. I think Poirier is going to get a shot at the belt and he's going to win it. I think he's the best tactician that there is in that division. I think that he's hungry. I think that he trains hard. He comes into the fight more prepared than the other fighter. I don't know if you saw that Logan Paul is donating his chain, his Conor McGregor chain, to Poirier to be auctioned off for his charity, which was both absurd, mean-spirited, but also kind. Also kind, because it's for charity. Doing bad things for charity, I've never quite understood that. Like, I'm going to do something mean, but the proceeds are going to go to charity. But to me, it was worth the money. I hated to see the fight end the way it did. I wish it would have gone the distance. That's what I was hoping for. But 13 fights, the undercard, the fights that happened before the main event were a lot of fun, were very entertaining, very well put together. And even the one that shouldn't have been put together, which was Moutinho and O'Malley, on 11 days' notice, the kid came out and he fought his heart out. And so even that one was a good fight. So a lot of fun stuff that happened in UFC 264. Unfortunate that it ended the way that it did. It will mean that Dustin Poirier gets a shot at the belt, which I think he will win. And we'll keep an eye on Conor McGregor, hope that he heals up well, and we'll see what happens with his career moving forward. From the world of sports, we go to the world of the paranormal. Our first story takes us to Latin America. The CIA simulated UFO abductions in Latin America as psychological warfare experiments. Throughout history, the field of ufology and the examination of the extraterrestrial hypothesis has without a doubt been overcome with a plethora of disinformation. Those who have dived into the depths of ufology know this best, as it's well documented that outsiders from intelligence agencies and governments have infiltrated the field for purposes of deceiving researchers and people who are interested in the topic for one simple reason: to keep them away from the truth. On top of these disinformation campaigns, which still seem to be in operation today, there has long been an official campaign of ridicule and secrecy. Enter Dr. Jacques Vallée, who holds a master's degree in astrophysics and a PhD in computer science. The subject of UFOs first attracted his attention as an astronomer in Paris. He subsequently became a close associate of Project Blue Book's J. Allen Hynek and has written several books on the UFO enigma. He's currently a venture capitalist living in San Francisco. Vallée co-developed the first computerized map of Mars for NASA in 1963 and later worked on the Network Information Center for the ARPANET, a precursor to the modern Internet, as well as serving as a staff engineer on SRI International's Augmentation Research Center under Douglas Engelbart. Vallée is a researcher that's had a very interesting life, to say the least, with regards to researching the topic of UFOs. He's come into contact with and had meetings with most experts in the field, politicians from around the world, high-ranking military personnel, and much more. His journey into the subject has led him to investigate an uncountable amount of case reports regarding UFOs and supposed extraterrestrial beings, and he's been a major player with regards to bringing the mainstream scientific community forward to look at the evidence and data that's involved with such a serious subject that in his time has largely been ridiculed. He's an important reason why the phenomenon 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 has gained as much credibility as it has today. Vallée is one of many who have written about and documented the startling evidence that well-constructed hoaxes and media manipulations have misled UFO researchers, dividing them from the UFO phenomenon itself. I already did the song. And what's really going on. In one of his latest books, Forbidden Science 4, he shares a record of his private study into unexplained phenomenon between 1990 and the end of the millennium, during which he was traveling around the globe pursuing his professional work as a high-technology investor. It's a bit of a diary documenting his experiences and encounters as he tries to examine and explore the phenomenon. In an entry dated Thursday, March 26, 1992, Valet writes, "I have secured a document confirming that the CIA simulated UFO abductions in Brazil and Argentina as psychological warfare experiments." Another time in his book, he mentions one of many conversations he's had with Ron Blackburn. Among the people that I met was Dr. Ron Blackburn, a retired U.S. Air Force lieutenant colonel who was then working at the Lockheed Skunk Works in Burbank. It was Blackburn who first asked me if I'd ever heard of the infamous Area 51. In the early 1980s, this facility was still not widely known inside the military, let alone the general public, even though it had already been functional for decades. Among areas of common interest between Blackburn and myself were UFOs. We discussed many possibilities related to who might be in charge of UFO research. We both thought that there was some organization, probably within the U.S. Air Force, which had the responsibility. But we acknowledged that whoever had the ball, there must be an interagency effort as well. Our assumption was that somebody must be in charge, and we were well aware of all the prevailing stories and rumors. Roswell, we assumed, was a real UFO event. Fast forward to Friday, May 4th, 1990, where Valet writes about Blackburn. "I'm convinced the government is working on UFOs," he told me. "What are the chances some witnesses are being fooled by special effects developed by psychological warfare?" I countered. "They're pretty good," he admitted. "Suppose you shine a weak infrared laser into people's eyes. It won't hurt them, but may induce a hallucinatory state. Experiments have been done where you send a microwave beam through someone's brain. You pick up the transmitted energy pattern. You can then influence people this way, even make them hear things. Holograms have been used also." It's interesting to note that the conversation Valet had with Blackburn in 1990, and then in 1992, Valet writes that he had received a document that the CIA had been involved with staging UFO and alien abductions. Combine this information with Blackburn mentioning that holograms have been used and technology exists to produce hallucinatory states. This is just one of many examples and pieces of evidence that many researchers in the field point to, suggesting that there are staged abductions happening for various reasons and that continue today. It's not surprising either if you venture down the road of CIA mind control tactics, programs like MKUltra, and their desire to manipulate the perception of the masses with regard to various topics. It's not surprising if you looked into the black budget world, a world that's far more advanced than the mainstream world with regards to technology. How deep does the misinformation go? Richard Doty is also mentioned multiple times in Valet's book. Doty is a retired Air Force Special Investigations officer, and his job was to spread disinformation about the UFO subject during his time with the Air Force. Spreading disinformation about the reality of UFOs is no secret, and in Doty's case, he admitted to infiltrating UFO circles along with his colleagues to feed UFOologists and journalists lies and half-truths so that they would never understand what was really going on. As you can see, this type of narrative has many interesting sources. Regardless, there is something going on here. Valet and all others in the field are quite aware that something real is going on, and something quite possibly extraterrestrial and interdimensional. Credible information with regards to sightings, crash retrieval, possible bodies, and contact experience with aliens are out there and can be examined. That being said, there is obviously a lot of disinformation out there as well, ridiculous claims as well as charlatans who are in the field spreading lies and fake stories for the purposes of making money, or perhaps to do what Doty was once tasked with, to spread disinformation. Even so, the fact remains, there's a serious possibility that we are being visited and have been visited for many years by people from outer space, from otherworldly civilizations. This should be the subject of rigorous scientific investigation and not the subject of rubbishing by tabloid newspapers. So, this story, this possibility is certainly news to me. This is nothing that I am familiar with or that I have heard before. Maybe you have, I have not. Jacques Vallée, on the other hand, is not new to me, and a lot of people have become familiar with him and his work when it comes to research into UFOs and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. in a couple months back, he was on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and so a lot of people have heard about him or heard from him there. It's kind of confusing, right? Because this guy, on the one hand, has legitimate credentials. Like, this guy is a PhD in astrophysics or something like that I can't even wrap my mind around. Like, I'm not that smart. He is, I'm not. Dude has a bunch of money and has devoted his life to researching UFOs. More power to him. If you've got the time and ability to do it, go for it. In the 60s, this man worked with NASA to map Mars. And if you're familiar with the work of Dr. J. Allen Hynek and Project Blue Book, which was an Air Force-led investigation into UFO claims, Jacques Vallée became very close to J. Allen Hynek and actually had access to all of his files and all of his research. So on the one hand, this guy has like legitimate credentials, and yet on the other hand, this guy is a through and through believer. Like, he has no skepticism left. So it's kind of hard to make sense when he comes out of left field with these different claims, which he's known for. Like, he's done this in the past. He's got these documents, but hey, we can't see them. It kind of has a Joseph Smith Book of Mormon feel to it, where it's like, hey, there's some golden tablets and an angel named Moroni, but it's in a foreign language that only I can read with my special spectacles. It kind of has that vibe to it, right? Because he claims all of these things, yet he never produces them or shares them with us. And so on the one hand, you want to write him off. Like, this guy's a loon. This guy has been given false information that he believes. He's been misled and duped. But at the same time, it's somebody that actually legitimately has credentials and has had the ability to have an audience with world leaders and military leaders and people who are in the know that the regular person would never have the opportunity to sit with and have such conversations. So it's hard to make sense of what he says, but here in his book, he claims that he has been given proof and evidence that the CIA was doing psychological experiments on people by faking alien abductions. And that seems crazy. On the one hand, I have read books about the CIA and some of their clandestine activities. I do not put such activity past them. I do not doubt that they are capable of such things. But my question is, why? Like, why is the CIA running around here in rural places and faking alien abductions? For what? For who? Maybe you know. I can't think of any good reasons why the CIA would occupy their time with such experiments, even if it is a mind control experiment. Interesting that they say they were doing it in Latin America and in foreign countries, not to our people here. So when it comes to this claim, I just can't make heads or tails of it. It's not something I buy into right off the bat. I have many questions that are left unanswered. I see no evidence or proof, and that tends to be what I go off of, is evidence or proof. And yet this man has credentials and has seen and heard things that I would never experience. And so I can't automatically just write it off either. It's certainly interesting. It's a fun concept to think about. It's a crazy story. And it kind of reminds me of something I read online this week, which was another theory when it comes to UFOs and aliens that I have never heard. And that's the theory that these UFOs that our government has actually known behind the scenes for decades, that these UFOs are vehicles that are carrying passengers who are not necessarily extraterrestrial in the sense that they come from other planets, but actually who are interdimensional, or from a civilization that is from a different dimension in time and space, who has got technology that is far advanced to ours. And the theory says that they made themselves known to President Eisenhower and struck a deal with our government that they were allowed to abduct a certain amount of people and do experiments if they would not use their technology to take us over or to harm us. Pretty wild stuff. That's not the claim here. The claim is that the CIA faked a lot of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that there is no extraterrestrial beings or interdimensional beings, that UFOs aren't real. This could be in addition to that. But such a wild claim to come from a book by Jacques Vallée. That's kind of par for the course for that man. And you can never really make heads or tails of it. Like, he's done a lot to further research in the field of UFOs, and he's also done a lot of things that have caused people to write off folks who do research into UFOs. So I thought that story was interesting, if nothing else, and was worth sharing. I don't put it past the CIA to be doing some crazy stuff like that out here. Like, that's who the CIA is. That's what they do. Like, they be messing with people professionally. It is their job. What do you think? Do you think that there's any chance that any of these abductions were actually done by intelligence agencies, that they were faking these things for different purposes or reasons, to do experiments, mind control, blah, blah, blah? Do you think that that's a real distinct possibility, or do you think it's nonsense? Do you believe the claims put forth by Mr. Valet, or do you think that this is another instance where he is far off base? Get at us. Message us on Twitter. Email us at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about that story. And I'm certainly curious to see what Mr. Valet says now that the government has come out and said that these crafts are, in fact, physical crafts. They are real, and we do not know where they come from or what their purpose is. From Latin America, we go to the White House for our next story. The first ladies who brought the occult into the White House. Over the years, several presidents' wives, including Mary Todd Lincoln and Nancy Reagan, turned to spiritual practices like seances and astrology. Before the emails or Benghazi or a blue Gap dress, Hillary Clinton dealt with a much less controversial stain on her character, which was that she reportedly liked to gab with high-profile dead people. In the 1996 book The Choice, How Ben Clinton Won... Ben Clinton? Who is Ben Clinton? Is that their cousin? I don't know that man. It's not Ben West. It's Bill. You can't read. Get you hooked on phonics. Go get your eyes checked. It ain't Ben Clinton. Let's try that again. In the 1996 book The Choice, How Bill Clinton Won, author Bob Woodward, no stranger to a good scandal, wrote that the former First Lady communicated with Eleanor Roosevelt and Mahatma Gandhi during her husband's term, though not Jesus, as that would have been, according to Woodward's retelling, too personal. She out here talking to Gandhi and Eleanor Roosevelt, but she ain't talking to Jesus. Maybe Hillary should spend a little time talking to Jesus. We not partisan on the show, but I'm just saying. I occasionally have imaginary conversations with Mrs. Roosevelt to try to figure out what she would do in my shoes, Clinton wrote in a newspaper column. She usually responds by telling me to buck up, or at least to grow skin as thick as a rhinoceros. That's very, very specific. If Mrs. Roosevelt is telling you to grow skin as thick as a rhinoceros. Not just to grow thick skin, shawty. I'm talking like rhinoceros. Very specific advice from Eleanor Roosevelt. From the grave. Sensational interpretations quickly followed. Clinton was holding seances in the White House. Alas, the fun didn't last long, as sacred psychologist Jean Houston responded to Woodward's assertions, clarifying that Clinton's chats were simply imaginative exercises to help with Clinton's book project. But while Clinton preferred to keep her scandalous activity tied to the here and now, other first ladies weren't so dismissive of the occult. From communicating with the dead to palmistry, spiritualism has attracted many first ladies, especially as a strategy for dealing with the demands of living and working in the White House. While it's possible some ladies were better at concealing their practices, 5 in particular, Jane Pierce, Mary Todd Lincoln, Edith Wilson, Florence Harding, and Nancy Reagan held moderate to strong interest in the occult, according to Pat Kreider, the executive director of the National First Ladies Library. And if anybody gonna know, it's Pat. Like, Pat's in the know. Pat directs a library about these ladies. If anybody's gonna know about their activities, I'm gonna go with Pat. My call, my phone a friend will be to Pat. So I'm gonna take you at your word there, Pat. That list could also include Grace Coolidge, Roosevelt, Lady Bird Johnson, and Jackie Kennedy, all of whom claimed to have seen Lincoln's ghost or felt his presence during their years at the White House, though they weren't bringing in astrologers or using mediums like others did. As to how these ladies formed a fascination with the occult, Kreider told broadly, people who are desperate for help, for answers, sometimes go to extreme measures. The assertion that many of the former president's wives were desperate for help is easily argued. Pierce, the first known First Lady occultist, that is a mouthful, came to bear the nickname The Shadow in the White House and lived in a permanently depressed state after her last surviving child, her son Benny, died in a tragic train accident at 11 years old. Weighed down with extreme guilt and anxiety, she initially attempted to beckon his spirit by addressing an emotional letter to him, asking him to return to her so she could repent her motherly shortcomings. God, help me now to correct in bitterness my errors when, it is too late for you to have the sweet benefit of it, And now this Sabbath evening you will come in fancy before me, and I sit close by you now with your hand in mine perhaps, or you will lean against me, or the sofa, or as sometimes you did on Sunday evenings, sit on my lap a little while, Pierce wrote. I know that people handle grief differently, but Mrs. Pierce, that is a creepy thing to do. But I do not judge you because losing a child is incredibly difficult. Determined to reconnect with her son, Pierce invited the Fox sisters, key figures in the modern spiritualism movement from upstate New York, into the White House to hold seances. Supposedly, the sessions provided Pierce some respite, though it wasn't lasting. According to her page on the White House website, at the conclusion of her husband's presidency, the couple made a prolonged trip abroad in search of health for her. She carried Benny's Bible throughout the journey. The quest was unsuccessful, so the couple came home to New Hampshire to be near family and friends until Jane's death in 1863. She was buried near her son Benny's grave. After the Pierces vacated the White House, lifelong bachelor James Buchanan moved in for 4 years, so no witchy first ladies. But the next spiritualist to arrive in the White House moved in just after Buchanan's term, Mary Todd Lincoln. Like Pierce, Lincoln lived through the deaths of her sons, and her occult process of choice was also seances. Even the purportedly honest husband himself attended a seance, according to historian Carl Anthony, that the Mrs. held in the White House Red Room. Apparently, she reached both her dead sons, Willie and Eddie, whose ghost she claimed visited her in the White House bedroom. So, Mary Todd Lincoln had a seance in a room in the White House called the Red Room. Ain't that some Jack Nicholson, Shining type stuff? Talking about some red rum. Red rum. That's creepy. Willie comes to me every night and stands at the foot of my bed with the same sweet, adorable smile he's always had, Lincoln told her sister, according to the Lincolns' Portrait of a Marriage. He does not always come alone. Little Eddie is sometimes with him. After her husband's assassination, reports claim that she attended a spiritualist commune, and 7 years after his death, she asked the infamous spiritual photographer, William H. Mulmer, to take a couple's picture of her and her husband's ghost. 7 years after Honest Abe was assassinated, Mary Todd Lincoln asked a spiritualist to take a couple's photo of her and her husband's ghost? Why have I never heard this before? This is crazy. Like, hey, if I pass on, I'm telling my wife, find somebody that can love you and take care of you and move on. Don't be having those seances trying to contact me. And whatever you do, don't expect to have no couple's picture with me. First of all, I'm already pale, okay? I'm already a little ghostly. Like, if I'm this pale in life, I sure don't want a picture of me as a ghost to be taken. How pale will I be then? I already look creepy. Come on. As for whether first ladies disproportionately dabble in the occult, Kreider thinks there's no significant difference. In mid-19th century New York, the Fox sisters' public seances popularized spiritualism right around the time that Pierce and Lincoln were trying to reach their dead sons. Later, both Edith Wilson and Florence Harding consulted with the astrologer Madame Marcia Champy in the 1910s and 20s when for-profit fortune-telling and astrological radio shows flourished until the FCC started its first term and cracked down on such broadcasts in 1934. According to a 1988 article in the Washington Post, Harding, whom Champy called a child of destiny, never made a move without first consulting her horoscope. Oh yeah, I've met girls like that. They like Starbucks and dogs, and they're white girls. They're white girls. Yeah. Before Warren even took office, his wife was consulting Champy and promised her that if her husband were elected, she would make Champy the official White House astrologer. According to the same article, she suggested to Champy that she would bring her in through the front door and not the back, a reference to how Florence Harding's predecessor, Edith Wilson, would sneak Champy in through the south entrance. People who are desperate for help and for answers sometimes go to extreme measures. What these women do experience at a higher rate is the likelihood of being teased or criticized. In another Washington Post article about Harding and her best friend published in 1986, the same writer notes the suspicious First Lady's obsession with the occult. During the end of Ronald Reagan's presidency, White House spokesperson Marlin Fitzwater spoke to the New York Times about Reagan's love of astrology after former White House Chief of Staff Donald T. Reagan's memoirs uncovered the couple's habits. It's true that Mrs. Reagan had an interest in astrology, Fitzwater said. She has for some time, particularly following the assassination attempt in March of '81. She was very concerned for her husband's welfare, and astrology has been part of her concern in terms of his activities. While the administration was careful to establish astrology had never influenced policy, Fitzwater did admit that it had an effect on scheduling. For example, the couple used astrology to determine the best time to announce that he would run for re-election. Decades later, Nancy's relationship, as well as her husband's more tenuous one with an astrologer, has been the subject of articles in USA Today and the New York Times, as well as the Los Angeles Times, which focused on her horoscope habit in her obituary last year, noting that she was mocked for it. And while Clinton's imaginative exercises could barely be considered spiritual or occult practices, her fake chats with Roosevelt were much chided too. The public primarily believes that the president and first lady should have traditional beliefs, Kreider told Broadly. Many would think that belief in the occult would be considered unchristian. Yeah. That's because seances and spiritualists are unchristian. Yeah. But if for just one moment you can be the type of person that thinks of Nancy Reagan as a typical wife filled with dread at the possibility of her husband's death, and not someone who sat back and watched AIDS ravage through America in the 1980s, you can sympathize with Kreider's ultimate point. First ladies are the same as everyone else, Kreider said. They have difficulties in their lives for which they struggle for answers. So I thought that was a pretty fun and pretty interesting story, and especially in light of the one that we covered a few weeks ago, in which Jenna Bush claimed that the White House was haunted. Here you have Jenna Bush saying publicly, hey, the White House is haunted. Come to find out that first ladies for decades have been holding seances, have been consulting with spiritualists, have been trying to get the ghost of their dead children to come visit them, and even claim to see the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. All information that I was unaware of. Maybe you have heard these things before, my tools, but I have not. I did not know that any of these things were happening inside our White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Seances and things like that creep me out. I certainly have an interest in conspiracy theories. I certainly have an interest in UFOs. I like to learn about and read about the research into cryptids and different things that exist, the paranormal world. But seances, your boy will not do. You have to draw the line somewhere, and mine is at trying to communicate with people who have passed away. Like, if they ain't here on Earth, shawty, I don't want to talk to them. I ain't trying to reach them. First of all, I'm not sure who you're reaching is really that person. Second of all, you already moved on. I'm still here. Let me worry about what's here. I might be grieving you. And that's what's going on here. These ladies were grieving loss. And when you're grieving loss and you're grasping for straws, trying to make sense of it, trying to find answers, I can understand gravitating to some things out of left field and doing some different things. You're looking for peace. You're looking for answers. You're looking for help from anyone that can give it to you. But hey, I'm not having no seances. Not in my house, not around me, not with my loved ones, not trying to reach people I care about who pass away. I'm just not doing it. To me, that's inviting all type of stuff that I don't want to experience, that I do not want to be a part of my life. You can call me a scaredy cat, and I will gladly say, yes, in this regard, I am a scaredy cat. For our next story, we go to the woods of Oregon. If you catch a Bigfoot. What if, while hiking through the Oregon woods, you stumbled across the legendary Bigfoot monster, roped the beast, and took it home? Next, you report your catch to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, like every good American would. Would the agency know what to do? Yes, says the agency, and to prove its readiness, they have written a lengthy news release describing just what it would do about your call. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services must be bored. They must have a lot of time on their hands if they're sitting there in the office like they got somebody, hey, boss, I ain't got much to do today with, I know what I want you to do. Sit down and write out what we would do. Put a plan in place if somebody catches a Bigfoot, what we gonna do. And that's what they did. But why, you might ask, has the U.S. government gone to such lengths over the possible capture of what at least so far is just a legend of long standing? Well, Fish and Wildlife reminds us the gorilla was only a legend until the late 19th century. Is that true? We ain't know about gorillas until the 1800s? Is that true? Now I'm going to have to take a deep dive into when did we learn about gorillas. I'm going to have to find that out. I ain't never heard that before, never read that before. I thought we knew what gorillas were for all of time. The 1800s is when, do they mean white people? Are we saying that we really just mean Europeans learned about the gorilla? Because is this one of them Christopher Columbus situations, like we didn't discover America until, like there was already people here, like they lived here. Is this one of those situations like most everybody knew about gorillas, but we didn't know about them, and then we popped up on the scene and was like, what in the world is this? And then we talked to people at home, and it was like, oh, I don't know what that is, and we was like, well, we'll call it the gorilla. I'm going to have to do a deep dive. I will let you know next week. We'll figure this out together. The Komodo dragon, a 10-foot lizard, once also was a legend. To be sure, added the agency, many sightings of today's legendary monsters are misinterpreted reports or even downright hoaxes. But there's more to be said for the existence of a genuine Bigfoot. Not only have there been sightings of the purported 8-foot, 900-pound Pacific Northwest humanoid, but Skamina County, Washington is prepared to impose a fine of $10,000 and a 5-year jail term on anyone who kills a Bigfoot. That's extreme. A 5-year jail sentence for anybody who kills a Bigfoot. But if they see a Bigfoot and they shoot it, that's really about the only way to definitively prove that it exists. I guess unless we capture it. Maybe shoot it with like a tranquilizer dart would be the way to go, and you will hopefully avoid the fine and the jail sentence. You don't want to go to jail for discovering something. Last year, the Florida and Oregon legislatures took up bills protecting Bigfoot-type creatures, and a Bureau of Indian Affairs policeman has a plaster cast of an 18-inch foot left after he claimed seeing a Bigfoot in South Dakota. So if Bigfoot were found, what then? The agency set up a scenario. Word of its discovery would be flashed around the world within hours. Hysteria, fear, or panic might accompany the news in the area where the creature was located. The throngs of curiosity seekers would be countless, and others wanting to find Bigfoot would not only create a serious threat to the animal itself, but to public safety as well. And, asks Fish and Wildlife, would such a creature be subjected to the same kind of exploitation as the giant movie ape King Kong? Hardly, if the interior could help it. After receiving priority protection under endangered species, Bigfoot would undergo humdrum processing for term safeguarding. The following would be: how big is the Bigfoot population? Do big feet occur anywhere else? Is the Bigfoot population in danger? Is Bigfoot's habitat secure? Are the Bigfoot species being exploited? And what is Bigfoot's reproductive cycle? But for the record, Keith Schreiner, Associate Director, says, I doubt we'll have to do anything because I'm not sure I believe there are any around in the first place. Fish and Wildlife out here just writing things. They just doing creative writing exercises. Like they just out here, hey, let's just put a plan together just in case. What will we do? They got a soft spot for King Kong over there at Fish and Wildlife. They like King Kong was exploited in those movies. And if Bigfoot is real, we do not want him or her to be exploited also. So let's put a plan into place. Let's figure out what we're going to do. But we don't think it's real. That man said, I don't think we'll have to do anything. I don't even think they're real. But I just wrote a very thorough plan because I enjoy writing very, very thorough plans. I don't know. I've said before, I guess when it comes to Bigfoot, I'm a hopeful skeptic. Like, what evidence really is there that there is even such a thing as Bigfoot? Like, lots of people have seen Bigfoot, but I've also seen a lot of instances where somebody saw Bigfoot be debunked. I've seen times where people swore that what they saw was a bipedal, ape-like, man-like creature, only to find out that it was a bear standing on both feet through the thicket, through the trees, through the brush, and they thought it was a Bigfoot. Other times it's been people in costumes. It's been just the way that a tree branch and a log and different things sit together that somebody thought it was a creature, and it wasn't. It was just some stuff that they saw through the trees. And then there's also sightings that can't be explained that seem very credible. Is it possible that there's some ape-like humanoid type creature out there, specifically in the Pacific Northwest, in the very, very thick and very dense forest and wooded areas? Yeah, it's possible. We discover new species all the time. We discover species even last week. Some bird I was reading about that scientists thought was extinct actually is still around. They found a few more. These things happen, okay? But we don't have any bones. We don't have any proven DNA. We don't have any scat. We don't have any remains whatsoever. The closest thing that we have is the Patterson-Gimlin film. And we won't even jump into that full on. We'll tackle that in another episode. But I'm not even sure about that. Like, I don't even know if I really definitively believe that that is a thing. Like, some people say that for sure it's real. Look at the creature. Look at its physical features. Other people say it is definitely, absolutely 100% a hoax. I'm not sure where I stand. If Bigfoot exists, like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's a neat thing. Like, I would like to know that that animal is real or was real. But mostly I feel like this is the Fish and Wildlife folks just seeking a little bit of attention. Like, hey, pay attention to us. We wrote a plan on how to deal with Bigfoot. We are an organization. Come work for us. Give us your money. Value us. We be doing work. And mostly it's just a public relations thing they did. They did something for fun. It doesn't really hold much water or give credence to the existence of Bigfoot. It's just a fun thing that Fish and Wildlife did. And I'm still waiting on some evidence. What do you think? Do you think the Patterson-Gimlin film is real and reliable and proof of Bigfoot? What am I missing? What evidence is there that I'm not aware of that I have not mentioned? If you have any evidence that to you is convincing, email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com and let me know. Give me your best sales pitch. Why is Bigfoot real? Why is it something that you are sure exists? I'm interested. I find it fun. I've read some information, some books, some studies, but I have not yet seen the proof. And what Fish and Wildlife did doesn't offer that proof either. For our last story, we go to Coney Island. Thousands of premature infants were saved from certain death by being part of a Coney Island carnival sideshow. At the time, premature babies were considered genetically inferior and were simply left to fend for themselves and ultimately die. Dr. Martin Cooney offered desperate parents a pioneering solution that was expensive as it was experimental and came up with a very unusual way of covering the costs. It was Coney Island in the early 1900s. Beyond the four-legged woman, the sword swallowers, and Lionel the lion-faced man was an entirely different exhibit, rows of tiny premature human babies living in glass incubators. The brainchild of this exhibit was Dr. Martin Cooney, an enigmatic figure in the history of medicine. Cooney created and ran incubator baby exhibits on the island from 1903 to the early 1940s. Behind the gaudy facade, premature babies were fighting for their lives, attended to by a team of medical professionals. To see them, interested parties paid 25 cents. The public funding paid for the expensive care, which cost about $15 a day in 1903, the equivalent of $405 today per incubator. Cooney was in the life-saving business, and he took it seriously. The exhibit was immaculate. When new children arrived, dropped off by panicked parents who knew Cooney could help them while hospitals could not, they were immediately bathed, rubbed with alcohol, and swaddled tight, then placed in an incubator kept at 96 or so degrees depending on the patient. Every 2 hours, those who could suckle were carried upstairs on a tiny elevator and fed by breast by wet nurses who lived in the building. The rest were fed by a funneled spoon. The smallest baby Cooney handled is reported to have weighed 1.5 pounds. His nurses all wore starched white uniforms, and the facility was always spotlessly clean. An early advocate of breastfeeding, if he caught his wet nurses smoking or drinking, they were fired on the spot. He even employed a cook to make healthy meals for them. The incubators themselves were a medical miracle 40 years ahead of what was being developed in America at the time. Each incubator was made of steel and glass and stood on legs about 5 feet tall. A water boiler on the outside supplied hot water to a pipe running underneath a bed of mesh upon which the baby slept. Race, economic class, and social status were never factors in the decision to treat, and Cooney never charged the parents for the baby's care. The names were always kept anonymous, and in later years the doctors would stage reunions of his graduates. According to historian Jeffrey Baker, Cooney's exhibits offered a standard of technological care not matched by any hospital of the time. In a wonderful interview recorded by StoryCorps and aired on NPR, a former incubator baby from one of Cooney's exhibits described how fragile she was at birth. My father said I was so tiny he could hold me in his hand, said 95-year-old Lucille Horn, who was born prematurely in 1920 at the shockingly low birth weight of under 2 pounds. Baby Lucille was given no chance to live by her doctor. I couldn't live on my own. I was too weak to survive. You just died because you didn't belong in the world, Horn said. But Horn's father, who had seen one of Cooney's exhibits on his honeymoon, bundled tiny Lucille up and took her out of the hospital. I'm taking her to the incubator in Coney Island. The doctor said there's not a chance that she'll live, but she's alive now. So he hailed a cab and took me to Dr. Cooney's exhibit, and that's where I stayed for about 6 months. Other parents took more convincing. Beth Allen, who was born in a hospital in Brooklyn at 1 pound 10 ounces, recalls her own story via email. My parents knew about the incubator baby sideshow in Coney Island and were reluctant to send me there, she wrote. Dr. Cooney came to the hospital and spoke to my mother, and she agreed to put me under his care. Allen spent 3 months on exhibit at Luna Park. She weighed 5 pounds when she left. Cooney always claimed a higher purpose for his summertime exhibits to show how a marvelous new technology could save fragile children, and in so doing, to prod a reluctant medical establishment to embrace the technology. But given that he was often sharing a crowded boardwalk with the exploited freak shows of the day, it's hard to know exactly what drew visitors through his doors. Was Cooney an evangelist or a showman? Medical historian Jeffrey Baker calls this the essential question about Cooney. I suspect he had a bit of both in him. For his part, Cooney bristled at the idea that just because his work was on Coney Island, it wasn't in the interest of children's health. All my life I've been making propaganda for the proper care of preemies who in other times were allowed to die, he told the New Yorker's A.J. Liebling in 1939. Charles Denson, director of the Coney Island History Project, which features photos from Cooney's exhibits, told the New York Times that Cooney and Coney Island were a perfect match. Cooney was ahead of his time, and he found a place that was receptive to his dreams. It wasn't until after his death that incubators became common in hospital maternity wards. Cooney died in 1950 in relative obscurity, but the families acknowledged the powerful impact he had on their lives. From former incubator baby Beth Allen. Although I have just a vague memory of his house, my parents and I visited Dr. Cooney every Father's Day for several years. Throughout his decades of saving babies, Cooney understood that there were better options. He tried to sell or even donate his incubators to hospitals, but they didn't want them. He even offered all his incubators to the city of New York in 1940, but was turned down. In a career spanning nearly half a century, he claimed to have saved nearly 6,500 babies with a success rate of 85%, according to the Coney Island History Board. In 1943, Cornell New York Hospital opened the city's first dedicated premature infant station. As more hospitals began to adopt incubators and his techniques, Cooney closed the show at Coney Island. He said that his work was done. Today, 1 in 10 babies born in the United States is premature, but their chance of survival is vastly improved thanks to Cooney and the Carnival babies. I thought that was an incredible story. One that I've said this tonight, but it's true, one that I'm just completely unfamiliar with. I've never heard that before. The fact that the reason why premature babies in America have a better chance to live today is because a guy named Dr. Cooney showed them off as a carnival sideshow in the early 1900s is astounding. If you read a little bit more about this guy, Dr. Cooney, you find out some interesting stuff. One, he was actually not even a doctor. Most historians have settled on that point that he was never actually a medical doctor, but likely a medical instrument salesman who became familiar at one of these shows of the practice of keeping premature babies alive in incubators that was already being done in Europe, and it wasn't being done in America. These babies were just being born and were given very little, if any, chance to live. The hospitals weren't even treating them, and Dr. Cooney couldn't stand that. So he came up with a creative solution and a way to pay for their care by charging admission for people to come in and look at them, which sounds incredibly demeaning until you read these accounts of how many lives were saved and what good care he took of them and how seriously he took it. This man is single-handedly responsible for 6,500 people growing up and being alive. And one of those people was actually his own daughter. He had a daughter that was a carnival baby. He had a daughter that was born prematurely. I think she weighed like 2 pounds or 3 pounds or something like that. And he actually had his own daughter in the sideshow and saved her life. And she grew up to live a long, happy life. It's a wild thing. It's a crazy story. This man used his creativity. He used his knowledge to do something that was not being done at the time. And it's really kind of heartwarming and kind of inspiring. I just had a nephew born. I know I said that several episodes ago, but I just had another nephew born, other side of the family, baby Grant. He is adorable, and he was born early. He wasn't as small as these babies in the story. He weighed 5 pounds, but he was born early. I was born early. I was a preemie. I was born 6 weeks early. There's a baby on my prayer list I'm sending prayers and good vibes for every single day that was born at a couple pounds. It happens more often than you think. And a lot of times these babies pull through and they develop and they grow and they live full lives. And to think that we have Coney Island to thank for that we have Dr. Martin Cooney, who people have never even heard of. He's an American hero, an immigrant who wasn't even a real doctor, who had the gumption and the creativity and the bravery to try something that most people would label idiotic, that most people would think was absurd, that people might have even turned their nose up at and thought that it was irreverent. And yet this man took a chance. And because of him, these babies live. Like, that's an inspiring story. And somebody should make a movie about Dr. Martin Cooney. I would pay admission. I know at the movies, your Coca-Cola costs $7, your popcorn costs $14, you pay $8 for your ticket, you wind up, if you take a date with you, spending almost $100 to see a movie. But if they make one about these carnival babies, I am there. And I will be crying. Because your boy has a big heart. Dr. Martin Cooney is a legend. He's a name that more people should know about. Teachers should be teaching about this dude in school. This is a story that I hope you have heard and been encouraged and inspired by, and that you will look into further, that you will share with those around you. Dr. Martin Cooney. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 19. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports, or politics that you'd like to share, you can reach the show by emailing us at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk the NBA Finals, and take a look at the story of the Hopkinsville Goblins. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling week. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!